This question discusses about destructuring of object literal. There are two relative questions, and this question is of object-oriented JavaScript. We have already seen the concept of destructuring in the array section, but I will still repeat the same thing for clarification that what is destructuring. As the name destructuring says that something is getting destructured, it also means there is already a structure which is getting broken. When I say structure, it means the data structure. So destructuring is a concept of breaking data structure like array or object literal into data pieces, or in other words, individual variables. In this section, we are discussing destructuring of object literal. For array destructuring, you can check the array section. Object literal destructuring will look something like this. For example, you have an object which has p code and p name, that is product code and product name, where we have values also 1001 and Apple. Now the thing is, if you want to bring product code and product name out of the structure and want to assign to individual variables, then you will write something like this. You'll say let p code is equal to obj.pcode, or maybe pname is equal to obj.pname. Now there are only two members at the moment, but when you have more members, it is a cumbersome job. So instead of that, you have an easier way in ES6 like this, where you can say let, in the curly brackets, you put list of all the variables and then you assign the object. You do have to take care here that the key name and here the variable name is similar. For example, in this figure, you see that I have already given p code and p name, which is the same key in the obj as well. Let's try it practically to get the clear idea. So here I can create const obj is equal to, and the same thing I'm going to write p code and of course p name. After this, I just want to destructure. Remember, the left hand side what you are writing in curly brackets is not an object literal. This is just list of variables which I am giving, that is p code and p name, that equals to obj. You are giving these curly brackets to show that you are trying to destructure an object literal. If it is an array, you put a square bracket, which we have already seen in the array destructuring inside array section. So now the only thing we have to check is whether this thing is destructured or not. So I will say console log. We'll try to display individual variables now. So product code and product name, and let's run this. I added a semicolon by mistake. Let me do it again. I'm running the code again. So now you see that we have individual variables where 1001 and Apple, that is two values, are destructured. So this is the whole concept of destructuring. Of course, in this case, right now we are destructuring an object literal. Same thing, a function can return an object and that can be destructured. Say for example, I put this object inside a function. So I'll say function, let's say test, and I'll shift this obj inside the function. And let's say this is returning an obj. That is the object. So now if you call the function, it is going to be the same thing. The similar example we tried with array destructuring as well, right? So here I will have the same output. That is the value of individual variables. Even while destructuring the object literal, we do have default value assignment. For example, if there is no value assigned to p code, then what should be the default value? So if I say, for example, 12 is the default value, or maybe 0 is the default value. So if there is no p code inside this object literal, let's see this. As you can see, if there is no value, then the p code is 0. But the moment I add a value, let's say p code is equal to 1002 at the moment, and I'll put a comma. Now if I run, then yes, we do have the value which was assigned in the object literal. So this is a very basic idea of breaking the data structure like object literal or array and getting the data pieces out of that data structure. Let's discuss relative questions of this topic. The first question is, explain a practical scenario of object literal destructuring. object literal destructuring is often used in all programs. The reason is that you get the data from the server in a JSON format. When you receive it, you will always have that data assigned to a JavaScript object literal, something like this. Now the data which is retrieved here, that will always be needed to be destructured, because you would not want that entire object literal like this. For example, you have, let's say, product detail. These many details you have, like product code, date, manufacturing date, name, price, vendor and whatnot. The data which you retrieve like this, that needs to be destructured because only few variables you want to use. So it's a very common way. So the practical scenario is like this, that where you have to use the destructuring of object literal. The second question is, explain the output of this code. So this is about default value assignment, which is possible with object literal. So here we have the default value functionality with A. So A will be 90 and B is going to be empty. That means it will not have any value, and by default inside JavaScript, if variable is not assigned with a value, it's going to be undefined. So if I run this, it should display us 90, that is the value of A, that is the default value, and undefined for B.